Welcome everybody to our Friday night schmooze and Zoom so we can hear your news, good news, simchas, anything goes here. We're thrilled to have you this May 29th, the last Friday of May, and we're thrilled to start out with Rose Lopater, our cantorial soloist, singing Shabbat Shalom for us. We're being recorded.
Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Yom Tov, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you,
Shavuot.
Rose.
Shavuot.
Thank you very much. So tonight, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Shavuot Someach. It is Shavuot tonight. And we'd like you all to share with us tonight your news, your views, your simchas, and in sync with Rabbi Barry's reading of the Torah today for Shavuot. And the part he read was for the 10 Commandments given to the Jewish people for Shavuot. We'd like to know if you might have the option of writing a commandment or a commandment or two. We'd like to offer up. Debbie, can you mute? Whoa, we need to. Debbie, we need to mute you. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so we want, if you were given the option to write a commandment or commandments today for us or the Jewish people, what would they be? So I'd like to turn it over to Rabbi first for him to be able to share something. So hold on, let me unmute Rabbi Barry. And Rabbi Barry, hit it.
And thank you very much, Sharon, for organizing this. Thank you, Rose, for kicking this off with a little lively music. Thank you for all of you for being on the Zoom with us. We have a very interesting Zoom session today. I did ask during the Shabbat celebration, if we were going to have 10 commandments written today, what would they be? Probably they wouldn't include give your donkey or your bull or your cow or day of rest. It might include some other things. So I wanted to kind of update it a little bit. So I like everyone to think about it. If you had a commandment to give, which one would it be? What would you add to the list? So think about that. We'll do that a little later on. In addition, I've contacted the media. I've been told that Channel 25 will be on with us because I wanted to share some words about what's going on now in Minneapolis. I don't see the reporter on here yet, so I'm going to hold off on that and we can get to some other things. Maybe we can get to that discussion. The Shabbat celebration was all about the really Shavuot, also Memorial Day, and also graduation. So I got my son Ari here, who is just graduating now. And I got a little sign in the background you can see celebrating his graduation. And so I'm going to turn it over to others. And I also wanted to mention there's two special guests that I want to make sure we get in. We have Shireen Stanger here, who's with our sponsor, the Weiss Law Group. These guys do wills, probate, trusts. And if you're looking to protect the future generations, as we are at Va-Dor, it's kind of a good idea to see them, and they can help make sure you can do that. We also have Guido Weiss. Guido Weiss is running for U.S. Congress. If he makes it, he'll be the only one, I believe, who speaks fluent Hebrew, and he also worked with Israel trying to get the United States and Israel to join forces to come up with alternative energy using their scientific know-how. So he's got great potential to help out. I want to have him share a few words also. So maybe we'll turn it over to, let Shireen say a few words, turn it over to Guido. I'm going to go call Anna over at TV 25, make sure she's okay, and then I'll be right back. But go ahead, take it away, Shireen, and then Guido.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Shireen Stenger, and as Rabbi Barry mentioned, I work for the Siegel Law Group. I work with Barry Siegel and Sherry Cohen, and we practice in the area of estate planning and probate. And I've known Rabbi Barry since the early 90s when I worked for him out of college and also while I was in law school. So again, thank you very much for allowing me to be on your call.
Thank you. Shalom, Shireen. Thank you. Guido, are you, let me see. Let me unmute you, Guido. Okay. I think you're unmuted.
Oh, wonderful. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
We can. Hi.
Wonderful. Well, hey, thank you again for having me, and also is on the call on the Zoom, Glenn Field, who's part of the team as the communications director. Just wanted to say Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom. We are so happy to be here with you. On Memorial Day, I'm a Navy officer, and Glenn is a Navy corpsman. We certainly take very seriously the week. I mean, Monday we had a town hall with veterans, and the whole week we're dedicating really to the subject of Memorial Day, and definitely thinking about and commemorating those who have fallen. You know, we talked about it last week, but I'm here running a Democratic campaign for Congress, the only candidate not taking corporate money. Oh, by the way, Ari, congratulations as well. Sorry about that. Congratulations, Mazel Tov. Not taking corporate money, running on a very, very strong environmental agenda, on a healthcare for all agenda. And we're hoping to bring a positive change in how we do politics here in Palm Beach County. And again, I was just thinking of one line that Rabbi Silver said about during earlier in the service, and he said, we need to have weapons of mass instruction, not weapons of mass destruction. And I really just felt and appreciated that throughout, being connected with Va-Dor. And again, thank you for having us. And if you have any questions about the campaign and what we're trying to do, or kind of I lived in Israel for years, and any questions about that experience, please let us know.
Thank you, Guido. We actually are going to have Guido, and we've invited Lois Frankel. I think she's declined, who is his opponent, and we're going to have a debate, a one-person debate, I guess, on Wednesday night, June 3rd at 7 p.m. That'll be on our webpage link, and it'll also be in our voice that we put out this week. And so look for that. That should be exciting to hear, be able to ask questions of Guido about what his views are on various points that we care about, whether it be medical or environment. Like he said, it's going to be his heavy hitting there. And I think that'll be exciting for all of us to be part of that discussion group on Wednesday evening, June 3rd at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And you can find that link on our website and our voice. So thank you, Guido.
And if I could just add one word to that, this is going to be the first debate we've had in this district on policy and what's going on since 2012 from the congressional perspective here. So this is something new. The county doesn't get, this district between Delray Beach and West Palm Beach and some West Boca and Wellington doesn't always get the opportunity to have these open and honest dialogues. So we're hoping to start off this Wednesday and lead the charge in terms of bringing the issues to light and having constituents have their say and input until the August 18th election and after that. So again, thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.
Thank you very much.
Let me just share with you that I ran and served in the Florida legislature. I know what campaigns are like, and usually they're not a campaign, they're an auction. They're usually sold to the highest bidder. Va-Dor is going to do whatever we can to challenge that, because the reason that happens is because people don't debate, and there's no exchange of views. There's just headlines and TV ads and flyers and brochures and big signs The way to counter that is to allow the candidates to have access to speak. What Guido said is incredible. Since 2012, there's never been any discussion, any debate, anything with the incumbent. That's going to change on Wednesday. On Wednesday, they will hear from the candidates. And if Lois does not want to show up, that's up to her, but they will hear the candidates, and they'll hear the candidates in every single race at Va-Dor. We intend to challenge this big money politics by giving everybody a chance to be heard. Speaking of which, I'd now like everybody here to be heard. So chime in, anybody, on anything you'd like.
So again, I will unmute you as you raise your hand for me. I'm going to put it on the views so that we can see. And I see Glenn Fields has, I will ask him to unmute himself. Glenn, go right ahead.
Hi, before we lose track about Guido, I'm his communications director. He's one of my best friends. I drove down from New York right before Corona hit to help on the campaign. And I just want to tell a quick story about how Guido and I met. Okay, this will be quick, don't worry, but it says a lot about him. So I was living in Jerusalem at the time, and where he was doing his master's in Middle Eastern Studies at Hebrew University. And I had this internship that brought me to the university, and I was having a hard time like meeting people. I don't know, like I was this American, I didn't like know like where to start, whatever. But through a couple people had introduced me to Guido like very briefly, and they said, I think you and Guido would like really hit it off. And I was a little nervous because like I didn't want to blow the situation because he might be my first friend in Israel. And sure enough, I ran into him in the library at Hebrew U. And I went up to him, I was like, hey Guido, what's up? It's Glenn. Oh, hey Glenn, how's it going? Whatever. He was like, he had been talking to my roommate. So he's like, yeah, I just saw Roni. And we made a little small talk. And then I'm like, hey Guido, do you want to like get some beers sometime? Because this might sound kind of weird, but I'm trying to meet guys. I'm not in this position very often. And he goes, no, I get it. Like you want to bro out? I'm like, yeah. So we like talk a little bit, and then we're walking. And while we're walking, he invited me to his like Thanksgiving dinner party, and he didn't even know me. So he's like, yeah, come, we're having this party. We're walking a little bit, and he stops at these two very lovely Israeli girls, and on a dime, this is back in 2012, on a dime, just speaks to them in like what seemed to me like perfect Hebrew, and invited them so like in this very friendly way to his party. And then when I ended up showing up at that party, he introduced me to my partner, and he also introduced me to people from every continent of life. He just had this unbelievable ability to connect with people across any culture, any value system. We had like ultra-Orthodox, secular Israeli, Arab, then people from Australia, Asia, Africa, South America, you name it. And anyway, after he invited me, he then brought me up to this the top of Mount Scopus, which is the highest point in Jerusalem. And you can see, on a clear day, you can see the Mediterranean, and you can also see like the border with Jordan on a clear day. And he was explaining to me his views on how to make Israel stronger, on how to make Israel, keep Israel like on the right track, and how we can criticize but also support at the same time. And I just knew from that moment, this guy's going to be a significant person in American history. He's, to me, like the reason I help him is because I feel like if a young Ben Franklin was my best friend in like 1730, you'd be doing everything in your power to help him too. And so that's my story about Guido. And I'm good. You can mute me now.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you for sharing that. So with that, if anybody else would like to share, please raise your hand. If you're not, I'll unmute you. And again, let me bring up, because some people joined us after I mentioned what we're going to talk about tonight. You can talk about your news, your views, your simchas, and in line with what Rabbi spoke about on his sermon tonight, and about reading of the Torah, the giving of the Torah for Shavuot. If we needed to write a commandment today, or commandments, what would you like to offer to us or the Jewish people of today as a commandment? So I see Carol and Jerry Kahn, who I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Okay, I'll get to you, Zaki.
Okay. You hear
Yes,
us?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. I think they should add a commandment that says you shall not legislate by social media. I think it'd be very important that the way the social media is being used for political purposes, there's got to be something in the Torah that has something about that.
Very cute. Thank you. That was Jerry and Carol Kahn, and they did the Kiddush tonight for our service. Thank you very much. Okay, I see Zachi Gadi. Go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom, Zachi Gadish. I dropped some letters, you know, to preserve them. Talk about Shavuot, Chag Matan Torah. So as Rabbi Berry said in the past, we really don't know if we really indeed got a Torah from somebody. Was it written? Was it oral Torah? So just to make a little thing and bring it back to history and geography, actually after Moses died, Moshe, you know, so even a parasha, Mot Moshe, Acharei, after Joshua, Yoshua bin Nun, the son of Nun, Nam, whatever you call this guy here in English, basically took over. And in his sermon to the people, it was very weird. He told all the history of the Jewish people from Adam and up, not mentioning even one time the Chag Matan Torah, giving the Torah, not mentioning anything about Har Sinai. How could it be if he's talking to the new generation? After 40 years, you had people that were not slaves. That was the whole idea, to run around the desert to get fresh people. So what happened is that he told them everything, but did not tell them about the Sinai. Did not say anything, actually. And so that made us very weird. And it says that after, when they looked inside the Kodesh, you know, whatever handled the Torah, they found only the two Luchot HaBrit, the two tablets that had only the 10 commandments, nothing written. Actually, it was not written or say anything about the Torah until really about 1,000 years later. So we're talking about the time of Ramses II. It's about 1200 BCE, before the Common Era. So add 3,000 years, 2,000 years to it, we're talking about close to 3,200 years ago. That was that particular event, if it happened like that. So we know a few of them because of the hieroglyphs, that there was some massive exit from Egypt. It didn't say about Hebrew, Ivrim, Hever. And then what happened is that basically the mentioning of anything was not happening until Ezra, the scribe. He actually put the oral Torah into writing. We're talking about more than 1,000 years later, actually 6th century BCE, where Ezra and Nehemiah left the Babylonian, Babel. We were exiled there. So the whole thing is that really saying what happened? How come there's no evidence for the Torah? Har Sinai, actually Sin is also China in Hebrew, but is one of the Babylonian gods of the moon. And also actually mentioned in Judaism, we say Elohim and Yehovah. So we're like using two elves, two gods, you know, sometimes separately and sometimes in the same sentences. So actually, we can see that although we think about, you know, the Jewish people as monotheism and everything, it's very hard to tell if really a Torah were given. And we know that, as the Rabbi said, that there are many versions and many ways and many scribes and people that wrote the Torah in different styles, different language, even in Aramaic. If you read Daniel, it's not even Hebrew. Was it written in Hebrew, Aramaic, etc.? So it's debatable, but it's interesting to know that we're still carrying the torch of the Torah and Har Sinai. And as you know, I was in the Sinai. I went up to what we call Har Sinai. It's Arab called them Jabal Musa, which means the Moses mountain. There's a Santa Catarina monastery of Franciscan monks that lived there for centuries and centuries. We used to climb this. It's beautiful to climb early in the morning and see the sun rising, you know, from the east. So it's very, you know, for Israel, I guess, some people, if you talk like that, they think that you're a heretic, you know. What do you mean the Torah was not given to us? The God wrote the Torah, everything. But we have to be more, like you said, maybe the 11th commandment is do not believe everything you hear. What do you say, Rabbi? You know, so this should be another commandment. Do not believe anything you hear, even if it's for 2,000 years, the same story. But, you know, it kept us up to here. We're sitting here in an environment is called Judaism, Yehuda, Jewish. whatever you call it, Jude. The people didn't like that name. So we can't really neglect completely the Torah or dismiss it as like a spoof or some type of, sermons in the
Zaki, you're
mountain.
cutting out. Your
Okay.
sound is cutting out. So I want to give somebody else an opportunity to speak also. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
Robbie, anything?
yeah, the sound was going back and forth. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. Who else do we have with their hands raised? Okay. All right, Harris, there you are. You're waving.
There I am.
Okay.
Can you hear
Harris.
me?
Yes, I can.
In lieu of the African American that was choked to death, they should fire the chief of police. These guys should have been trained how to handle. This isn't the first time that this has happened. It's happened many times before. And for a policeman to choke anybody, it's a horror. And the chief of police should be terminated. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Any comments?
Any comments about that?
Just-
Okay, we see Valerie and Mishka. Yes, they have a comment. Maybe on that, I'm not sure.
Actually, I do have a comment. I wonder how many people were standing around taping this thing and didn't go over and at least either push the police officer off him or tell the police officer to get off him. Everybody was standing around and you heard nobody in that crowd protesting. So why is that? You stand and you do nothing, which is what the rabbi was talking about earlier today in service. You can't just stand around and do nothing. If you see an injustice, do something. Make your presence known, make your voice known. And if you have to take action, you take action. Because as far as I'm concerned, that was cold-blooded murder.
Yes.
Harris, rebuttal?
Well, the 3 police officers that were there should all go to jail for not interrupting the choking. She's absolutely right. It was the police officers had the opportunity to stop the guy from choking the African American to death.
Bruce?
Valerie's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Emily has her hand up.
okay, hold on.
I mean,
Zaki, go ahead.
yeah,
sorry.
I just want to say that they said on the news that the policeman that was with his knee on the throat of the guy is going to be tried as a third-degree murder, which carried 25 years in jail in the state of Minnesota. All the 3 of them were immediately fired by the chief of police, and brutality of cops are all over the place. We have like bad people, we have also bad cops. And I guess they need a re-education, and people did protest around, but you really don't go against the police because they're just...
Zaki, we're having problems with your speaker again. Sorry, we're having problems with your,
But that's it,
okay.
I don't think he'll get more than 10 years.
And
Okay.
Emily's waiting to
Emily,
speak.
go ahead,
Okay.
Emily.
If you watch the video, there was a gentleman, a white gentleman, who approached the police and said, but you're approaching a policeman, whether you're white or black, you have to be careful. And he said, let him go. And the police ignored him. So there was one person. Following all this, you have to understand the general prejudice in this country against people of color. A CNN newsman, one of a group, was arrested. You can see it on TV, not the other white newsman, and he was released, and they filmed him taken into custody. Why? Because he was black. And again, because visually there's that difference and there is that prejudice. And until we can do something about eliminating some of that prejudice in this country by our leaders leading that, and I hope, Guido, you will be one of the people who will lead against prejudice. I can't see under this administration how we can improve ourselves.
point. Guido, you wanna comment on that at all?
Absolutely.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Guido.
Just one personal anecdote on that. I was a Navy police officer before switching over to the intelligence world, and I remember going to school to learn how to do security on military installations, and learning how to be in these situations as the person on the law enforcement side of things. And we were taught from day one, that's not how you do it. You don't put your
That's
neck on
right.
some, you don't put your knee on somebody's neck. You don't put them in handcuffs on their chest with any pressure because they can asphyxiate. There was so many things that with 2 to 4 police officers with years of experience, it was such a clear aggression and disregard for what the standards are for proper law enforcement. So that was something to me and I was I'm no law guru, but this is what I learned from my classes, that was a no matter what the situation, you don't do that. So that's one thing. In terms of what Emily mentioned, I believe that it's a systemic thing. It's something. Van Jones was on earlier, and you mentioned CNN, and he was talking about, you have a lot of people who say, I'm not racist, but as soon as they're walking down the street with a minority, they automatically might assume something could happen to them because they're white and there's a minority next to them and it's dark outside. And you have a lot of people with inherent racism that they might not ever show in public, but it's there. And I think that there's some of these systemic issues that we need to really root out. And absolutely, I'm hoping to do my best job to be an active voice for the community, to be engaged with every community. It doesn't matter where they're from or their racial background, to help to work to make correctional changes to law enforcement. There's programs that some states that are more progressive are doing a much better job at smart law enforcement, community relations, and some states are just, we even have it here, doing a terrible job. And a lot of this, and the last thing I'll say is, a lot of it goes unseen. So many minorities experience stuff like this every day that we don't even know about. So we all need to work together, and I hope, and I'm sure that Rabbi Bear is going to lead the charge, but we can all work together to change things for the better.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to comment about that or anything else? Okay.
Right.
All right. Rachel, asking to unmute you, please.
Hi, I just wanted to tie it back to the commandment. I was thinking that it could be something like life should be respected regardless of the person's merits. Because I see a lot of stuff on social media with well-meaning people who are trying to showcase, I guess, the humanity of people that are being targeted by showing they went to church, or they were in the choir, they did all these great things, but it shouldn't matter if the person's like a hero or a doctor. We need to really look past that and just see that, people have this idea that they're pro-desirable life, but we should be really looking for value for, all life.
Yep. Once again, and I've told the story before, if you are a person of color, it's very difficult in this life to negotiate things. I've told you about walking down the street with my Black grandson, approaching someone on Rosh Hashanah, a group of men, and I said, Good Yontif, and when passed, I said, William, why don't you say Good Yontif? And he said, because I'm a big Black kid and I don't talk to anyone unless they talk with me first. But that's sad. It shouldn't matter what color you are, but it does.
Okay, I understand that Wendy Frank wants to speak. I don't see Wendy. Okay, give me a second. Let me find Wendy. There she is. Okay, Wendy. All right, Wendy, go ahead.
Hi, I kept wondering when you were going to recognize me.
I'm sorry, I did not see your hand. I apologize.
I know, and
for
I've been
that.
going like this for the last 20 minutes.
Sorry.
This is absolutely horrendous, and Emily is totally right. I was going to say, for anybody who's had a close Black friend, but if she has a grandson, then she certainly knows it firsthand. When somebody mentioned, why didn't people go up? Many people were shouting out and saying, stop it. What people don't realize who are not people of color, that you attempt to go near a policeman and tell him what to do, and it can be considered assault. They'll turn it into something. And if it was you or me, Sharon, they might take it differently. But certainly for many of the people of color, they can get arrested. They don't know what will happen. If these are people that actually have jobs and have things in their life, getting an arrest on their record can totally ruin their life. You and I don't think about that because we're not doing anything to get arrested for. Well, they may not be doing anything to get arrested for either, but they'll still get arrested. So in terms of all those people shouting out and videoing, but not physically stopping, I can understand that, especially when there were 4 cops. And I thought to myself, what about calling the cops? But you've got 4 cops there that are doing nothing. Plus, it's apparently well known in that the Minneapolis Police Department has a lot of issues with race. And I don't know how many of you were up to see this live. I'm up till 3 in the morning. So I was watching this, you know, absolutely appalled as one thing after another was going on. Even though the protesters couldn't be socially distanced, they were pretty much wearing masks. So they did come there, you know, being reasonably appropriate. If you saw some of the demonstrations in some of the other cities, they were walking around hands up, holding hands, because the cops always say that to them when they're in the car, wherever they are, to make sure they don't have a gun, etc. So a lot of the Blacks were trying to be as agreeable as possible, but this is just so ridiculously appalling when they interviewed prosecutors who said there were smaller, lesser charges, you know, little things they could have indicted them on and held them on while they're putting this together. And for that idiot at the press conference yesterday, they made a statement they had some evidence like that might dispute this. You know, when they're looking at these 10 cell phone videos, you know, for those of us, and there's plenty of us in the temple that can remember Rodney King, when that went on, I think some of us, there were mixed feelings because of all the looting, all the fires, and because cell phones weren't around then the way they are now, probably not trusting the people that said it really happened the way it happened. So, but I watched this, and my sister and I talked about it this morning. You know, my reaction is totally different to this. I can totally understand these people, you know, doing it, you know, and especially when they say all the rage that would have been built up for people being inside so much after Corona.
Thanks, Wendy. I think Andy has something to say. I want to recognize Andy because Andy is the brains and the musical talent behind these Shabbat celebrations. And well, first of all, I want to thank Wendy. She always has very important comments to share with us about social issues. I'm always glad to hear from her. I want to hear from Andy also. Share with us if you'd like anything about the Shabbat celebrations that you're working on or any other issues. And then I'm going to chime in about my thoughts about what's going on.
Well, first of all, the racism is so inbred in the white privilege. Why don't we look at that situation in Central Park, for God's sakes? How this woman was just creating this whole world because she didn't want to listen to some other person who happened to be black. Put your dog on a leash. And suddenly she created this whole narrative that was false. He recorded it. And that's the only reason that she was had to back off, and God knows what happened to her. But so for her to be able to think that her privilege could trump decent behavior is unfortunate. But maybe one way for these police to not be, for every incident that we see on video that's captured, there's maybe 100 that go unreported. So there's a long, our prisons are filled with people falsely accused. So.
Thank you, Andy. Rabbi?
Yeah, I don't see Anna. I've spoken with her before. I just didn't make it. So I'll make my comments now. I want to thank everybody for sharing your thoughts with us. And I can prove that what Guido said was correct. Glenn said, he hangs out with anybody, everybody. If he's hanging out with us at Va-Dor and he's part of this crowd, then that kind of proves that he'll spend time with anybody. So we appreciate him being here. I also want to share with you my thoughts about what's going on. I've been told that I'm not supposed to speak out about issues, or I shouldn't speak out about what our president is doing. Fortunately, that is not true. The Jewish religion was started basically by people who challenged authority. Abraham challenged God and said, how dare you suggest that you're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? That would not be just. He challenged God himself. And ever since then, Jews have challenged authority. And anyone who says that a rabbi shouldn't speak out against authority has no clue, none, about what the whole religion of Judaism is all about. It continued with Moses taking on Pharaoh, with Nathan taking on King David, with every prophet worth his salt challenging the kings and telling them that they're acting unjustly. And I still have Jewish people telling me, you should not say anything about our president. Well, maybe that's true in some other religion, but it is not true about Judaism. And it's also not true that we should just criticize based on our party affiliation. So I have a track record of criticizing President Obama frequently in the past, yet I still chose to have him come on to speak to the seniors and repeat what he said. Even if you heard it, he's worth hearing again because he's extremely eloquent. And just as I criticized him, I certainly will criticize our current president. Now, he went on TV tonight when the entire country is tense and looking for some kind of leadership, looking for someone to offer a clarion voice. And what do they hear? A clown coming on criticizing China about the coronavirus when his own faults are legion. And he has nothing, absolutely nothing to say about the killing of this black youth, other than to say that where there's going to be looters, there's going to be shooters. I mean, this is a complete abandonment of any type of leadership or moral authority. If there was ever any doubt anywhere before, it's gone. And Dante said that the lowest level of hell is reserved for those people who are silent at times of moral crisis. If that's true, then there must be a reserved seat for our president, who is absolutely abysmally silent. Fortunately, we're not. Fortunately, we live in a democracy, so we're not dependent on him for moral authority. So I spoke with Bishop Banks, Bishop Sylvester Banks, whose grandson, Corey Jones, was killed by a white police officer. And instead of getting angry and urging people to violently protest, he urged justice. He said, let us use restraint and let us work within the system. And therefore, we must condemn the killing of this young Black person, totally unprovoked, outrageous. But we also must condemn the violence that is used as an aftermath, because that violence now dilutes the whole message. And the violence is completely unacceptable. And nobody should condone it. There were many peaceful demonstrators. Most of them were, and they should be applauded. That's what Martin Luther King was all about, peaceful protest. That's what we need. I've led many, many protests, and I can tell you that as a leader of protest, you have an obligation to make sure it stays under control. That's your obligation. If you can't do it, don't do the protest. You got to keep them under control. If it gets out of control, you must disband. You must walk out and have nothing further to do with it, because then they're tainting the whole message. There should be no violent protests. As far as the bystanders, I understand that some people are a little nervous. You don't want to mess with the police. I've made my kids nervous. I've almost been arrested in front of them at least 4 or 5 times. I think that we give far too much deference to the police. Any one of those bystanders should have called 911. They should have called the police department and got the supervisors out there. They should have formed a cadre of cars surrounding them, beeping their horns, blaring on their horns. So what if they might come after you and arrest you for trespass or something? Let me say something else about the police. I've sued the police many times. I know what people are talking about. The police officers are given a badge and a gun and are given control over life and death. They should answer to a higher scrutiny, not lower. If a police officer does something like this, it shouldn't take 4 days to figure out something went wrong. If you have a videotape of these guys doing that, what else do you need to know? It doesn't excuse violence at all, but this was ridiculous that it would take that long. And if you have 4 officers all in the same place, all watching this, you know there's a lot of rotten apples in that barrel. You know that this is pervasive. I know it's pervasive because I've handled at least 5 cases where police shot dogs, because dogs can't speak and they shoot first and ask questions later. There's too many police officers who were hired because they have a little too much testosterone coursing through their veins and they want an excuse to be able to unload their gun or to perpetrate violence or to boss people around or to tell people what to do. If you're hiring a police officer, you better be aware that there's some people who want that job so they can push people around and abuse their authority. And if anyone shows any signs like that, out the door. I'm told that the guy who did this had a track record that was pretty lengthy. I don't know if that's accurate, but I know for a fact I had cases where dogs were shot and the officers just lied through their teeth, and I could prove it, and it was obvious. A lot of times the juries don't want to go against police, and a lot of times the police figure, who cares? It's a dog. Nobody in their right mind is going to sue because you don't get damages. Well, I did, and I've seen what's going on. And from my experience, dealing with the police a lot, and dealing with cases of discrimination with police officers, I can tell you that most of the police officers are good people, but there's a very large amount of them who are not good at all. And you got to totally revamp what's going on. Racism is the original sin of the United States, along with guns. Guns, racism, slavery, genocide against Native Americans, and it is all enforced by the gun. But we shouldn't say today that everybody's a racist. Today, most people, I believe, are not. I believe every single person on this line and most people in our congregation and most people in America, most people are pretty much on the other side of the curve. Yes, we may harbor certain beliefs, we have certain prejudices, but in general, most people are good and most people now are not racist. But there's a fair amount of people who still are. They need to be dealt with swiftly. And the last thing we need, the very last thing we need, is a president who's not only blowing dog whistles, he's issuing cat calls and instigating racists. Now we must say that not all of the supporters of President Trump are racist. Absolutely not. There are many good people who support him. But I will tell you this, not every supporter of Trump is a racist, but every racist is a supporter of Donald Trump. And I'm pretty sure about that one. Okay, so we have to recognize where this base is coming from. It's coming from base instincts. And if we're a rabbi, if you're a lay person, if you're a person of conscience, and I would suggest if you're Jewish, you have an obligation to speak out. Because it was, I believe, Brandeis who said, in a democracy, some are guilty and all are responsible. And if we don't do anything about this, we're all responsible. That's all I have to say.
Rachel, I think, Luis, do you want to say something? No?
Yeah, I'll share. I'll
Yeah,
share something.
I thought you had something in the chat that.
Well, that was
maybe-
Rachel was the one
Okay.
who.
Oh, okay.
Well, before anything, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. I know it's
Shabbat
trying times now, with everything going on, COVID, and also these recent killings of unarmed black men and women in the United States, which, as everyone here has recognized this, and some have stated, it's not something that we're not unfamiliar with. It happens, unfortunately, a lot in this country. I personally, I've gone through, as someone of color, I've gone through a lot of discrimination in my life. I actually, in my time at graduate school at New York University, I was actually leading a historical walk throughout Greenwich Village. And I was just telling everybody about the architecture and different social movements that took place within Greenwich Village, such as the Stonewall riots. And as I was giving a speech right in front of the Stonewall riots, a police officer came to me and asked me what was I doing, and asked to see my identification. I was teaching a class at one of the most prestigious schools in the world. So that gives it, in New York City of all places, which is one of the most progressive places in the world. So that led, just to give you an idea of what happens. But it's not all gloom and doom as well. There's a lot of your comments here. As someone of color, means a lot to me to hear what Harris has said, Emily, Wendy, Rabbi. So Guido as well. Thank you. It means a lot to me, and we've seen a lot of progress in the history of our country. And I hope that if we held ourselves responsible and we assume action, we will be able to also, continue this progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. You're being applauded.
Dan, my brother Dan wants to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Dan.
Go right ahead, Dan.
Hi.
Dan the man.
Yeah. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted and you're on. You're live.
Okay. Well, I'm always telling everybody my main thing is to get outside every day and get some fresh air. And we're all told by the Corona police that we have to stay inside and keep a mask on and everything like that. So I'm just telling you, get some fresh air, go out there. That's my commandment. Take care of your body. Most people take better care of their car than they do their own body. So that's the best defense against Corona. You can stay 6 feet away from people. You can put the mask on. You can do all that stuff. But the best thing you can do is to build up your own immune system. That's your body's mask that you wear all the time to protect yourself. Get enough rest. Consume lots of vitamin C, oranges, and grapefruits every day. And avoid alcohol and things like that. And keep your immune system strong. It just seems kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but this poor guy that got killed by the policeman with his knee on his neck, choking him, basically deprived him of air. And that's what the coronavirus does too. It's a respiratory thing. And of course, the word inspire, maybe this story can inspire people. The word inspire and conspire both have to do with breathing and have to do with the breath and things like that. This other poor guy that was shot while he was jogging, again, he was out trying to get some fresh air, just trying to get a little bit of exercise, get healthy, and he gets shot down by not just two people. I think there was like 4 involved at least, because there was the 2 guys in the truck, There's another guy in the truck that was waiting for him ahead of time. Then there was at least another guy who was filming the whole thing. So that sounds like a conspiracy to me, conspiracy with the breathing. But it's just all these cases keep happening, and it seems like we're over the whole racism thing, but it seems like it's alive and well now. I'm not sure exactly what stirred it up. I have some theories, but it seems like it's alive and kicking right now. But that's all I had to say about that.
Thank you, Dan. Shabbat Shalom.
Wendy has her hand up.
Wendy, okay. You're unmuted, Wendy, I believe.
Two quick things. One, we don't know that people didn't try calling, because the thing is, with them doing this for 9 minutes, within 5 minutes, this guy was dead anyway. So if people even waited a minute or two to call, as quick as cops would get there, would they get there, before he was dead? So we don't know that nobody did call. The other thing is, that was unusual about this is normally the cops all stand together. Several police chiefs were on CNN last night from different states saying this is absolutely unconscionable. All these police were backing the blacks, and that never happens. So maybe with that, there could start being a little bit of change. We can pray anyway.
Thank you, Wendy, for your words. Okay, Ron. Hi, Ron. Shabbat Shalom. Ron? We don't hear you, Ron. Ron, we don't hear you. You're unmuted, but you have no video, you have no audio. Yeah, I'm sorry too. Okay, Sydney, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead, Sydney.
Well, three things. One, on this whole incident, I think that the fact that it has created such an outrage is a very positive sign. I'm 75 years old. When I was a young man, let's say 65 years ago, it wouldn't have been noticed almost. Especially, I grew up in New York City in a bad neighborhood. It was so commonplace. It would have passed without incident at all. The fact that 65 years later, it's creating a big turmoil shows that there has been progress. Two other things. I want to thank Rabbi Barry and Andrew and the rest of the Va-Dor crew for having a segment for the veterans. I think that was a very important thing to do. It's something that I know my grandkids don't even know what World War II was all about, or the Vietnam War, or Korea, or any of the wars that have occurred in my lifetime. And so it's good to have something that I can point to them and show them and help educate them about how bad things were in that war and why they need to be aware of doing whatever needs to be done to avoid it again. Also, the segment with our last president for the graduates was very appropriate as well. I felt very bad. I have an 18-year-old grandson who's graduating without a service, without any of the kinds of positive, happy things that most graduates experience. And the message was really well done. I have to agree with you. Whatever faults I might find with the last president, he was an eloquent speaker, and he put together a great message. And I'm glad also to be able to forward that to my grandkids. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sid, for your words. I appreciate that.
Sharon,
Rabbi
I have
Barry,
someone,
okay.
Sydney, I want to thank you for your comments. When we do the Shabbat celebration, there's a little bit of a decision-making involved. Should we do mostly the prayers, the traditional service, or should we integrate different things, even though they're not prayers, that are meaningful? I felt it would be worthwhile to have quite a few different things about this greatest generation, especially while we still have someone from the greatest generation to interact and to speak to the graduating seniors. So we deviated and we didn't do all the prayers that we normally would have. But I'm glad you appreciate it, because I thought it was certainly worth it to hear these people speak and to hear these tributes. And we can do all the prayers other times as well, but we did enough of them, I thought. I have someone on the line who's never appeared before by Zoom, and she wants to play a very special song for her grandson, for Ari. So, Mom, go ahead, take it away. That was a jazzed up version of the graduation song. Now, Mom, do you want to say anything to everybody here? Speak now or forever hold your peace. What do you want to share with everybody besides your musical talent? Do you have any words of wisdom after 96 years? She lets the piano do the talking. ילדים בחושה יישא.
You have something to share.
Very nice. All right, Mom, do you want to say anything?
Rabbi, I wanted to share a couple things with everybody.
Go ahead.
I want to share that if you did watch the service tonight, there were two things in it. One was a video of Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, and the story is called Following the Footsteps of My Father. And if you want to see the entirety of that video, it is now on our website under virtual events and programming. Just scroll down to other programs and you'll be able to see the entire of that video, which is an extremely moving video. Rabbi selected just minute pieces of that video, and it's a very impactful story of 14 minutes. And I recommend you to watch that. I also recommend that you watch the full entirety of the interview that Rabbi Barry and Ari presented to Bill Schwartz as he shared his words of wisdom and his message to the graduating class of 2020. Ari was representative of that, but there are, of course, are many other young men, both college and high school graduates, that those words are very impactful for. So if you want to see that interview in its entirety, which is about 39 minutes and change, that is also on our website under virtual programs and events. Just scroll down and you'll see both of those. Bill Schwartz, D-Day survivor, one of the few remaining ones, who's very, very eloquent speaker, and shared his stories and some great words of wisdom to Ari, to Rabbi, and the world. So I think those are both things that I would highly recommend for you to go online and listen to those. And with that, unless somebody
Thanks,
else
Ann.
has something more to share. Yes,
think,
Rabbi.
I think Sid has something to say, and then I want to wrap up. I think Sid
Okay.
has a comment.
Okay, Sid, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give Rabbi Barry some feedback on his concern about eliminating prayers for some of the things that he has been doing. When I started out as a Jew, as a young guy going to services at Young Israel, the congregants all davened. They davened very quickly. Even though I was taught how to say the prayers by heart, I had no idea what I was saying. I transitioned from the Orthodox to conservative because there was some English, and at least I knew a little bit about what was going on. And they davened a lot slower, so I was able to go along with them for the most part. I'm now going to Reform services. And now I'm transitioning to your services more often than not. I got to tell you, what's meaningful, because when I first asked my Reform rabbi, I said, you don't daven, you just sing. This is not what I'm used to. And he said, if I can get the whole congregation singing together as a community, and we know what we're saying, and we're learning Judaism, not Judaism, he points out, because Judaism doesn't exist. It's Judaism. He would always correct people. That is what it was all about. And I think you're just pushing forward that same concept to a higher level, and it's nothing wrong with it. I think it's good.
Thank you, Sydney. That was great. Thank you. Anybody else have their hand up before we do a wrap here? Okay, Rabbi, do you want to say anything else? I did want to share that Ron Chazan's audio was not working, and he shared Shabbat Shalom and Chag Shavuot Sameach to all of us. So thank you, Ron, for being on. I'm sorry you have audio problems tonight, but I know he wanted to share that. Harris, you had your hand raised? Harris? Okay.
Friday night, we need more music and less Hebrew.
Thank you, Harris.
Because Jews love music.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just wrap up. If you were to ask 20 people, what do we need? One will say more Hebrew. One will say less Hebrew. One will say more videos. One will say less videos. One will say more humor, less humor, more politics, less politics. What we're trying to do is come up with a very meaningful, impactful, spiritual celebration that's going to please as many people as possible, but mostly satisfy the rational mind and the heart. And we're doing the best we can, but we do appreciate your feedback. I love when Harris contacts me and says, I thought this was good, I like this. The more people I hear from, the better. And they're all not going to say the same thing, but when I hear like 50 people saying the same thing, I start getting the right impression about what's going on. As far as the prayers go, if all we have is a prayer, then we haven't got a prayer. We need to do more than ask a supernatural being to come to our aid. Because every time people have tried to do that, it fails. Okay, we can't do that anymore. Religion can't be satisfied with asking someone else to help. That's what little kids do. When you're 2 or 3 or 4, you ask your parents to help and you're helpless. And humanity was helpless when we didn't know about the germ theory of disease. We didn't know about tectonic plates causing earthquakes. We didn't know about weather and climate and drought. And we thought there was somebody out there doing everything, and we prayed to them and hoped for the best. We're not in that situation anymore. We're not little children. But some of us want to stay that way religiously and spiritually. They want to be little babies asking mommy and daddy for help. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to be mature and recognize that our ancestors were onto something. They noticed that everything's connected. Everything is all one, that they could aspire to something greater and use the best they could of their potential to create a better life. We're doing that too, but we're standing on their shoulders and using science to take it one step further. So yes, we will continue to have traditions and continue to love Hebrew, but it'll be explained in a way that's rational and that makes sense. Finally, I'll just say this. for the United States to get out of the World Health Organization during a pandemic is sheer, utter insanity. Anyone who would say that we should withdraw from WHO doesn't even know who's on first. They are completely, utterly clueless, and we can't go along with that anymore. I just want to also say it's a pleasure to be part of a congregation that believes in speaking out and speaking up. We're going to continue to do that. I encourage you to do it. If I say something at the Shabbat celebration you don't agree with, let me know. If you have an issue that you care about, let us know. We're all here for exchanging views and discussing things. The greatest generation faced an enemy that was easy to identify. They flew over from Japan, bombed Pearl Harbor, and we could look and say, there's the enemy. We know them. They had swastikas on and they were butchering people left and right. We could see the enemy clearly, and the country galvanized together to fight the enemy. Today, the enemy is not as clear. It comes in the form of a little virus, it comes in the form of little atoms, carbon in the atmosphere that is not so easy to detect. It doesn't wear a uniform. But my friends, we are fighting against some of the most difficult, challenging enemies, especially with climate change. Some people can't recognize them, but we better. We better realize we're in a war to protect Mother Earth. And there are some people who are fighting against the planet. And many of them are taking a lot of money from lobbyists. And they're on the wrong side of this battle. And we're going to have to take them on if we're going to save this planet. Thanks a lot, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Shavuot Tov.
Shabbat Shalom.